great model to show up at pyramids. And then what would this be? You don't really see a renal papilla well here, but what would this little thing be? Remember, it's a 1 to 1 to 1. So that would be a minor calyx. And then where they come together, this would be major. And usually for each renal papilla, you're going to have its own minor calyx, its own papilla. And then the minor calyx usually come together to form 2 to 3 major calyx. And then the major calyx come together to form what? Renal pelvis. And then your renal pelvis, a ureter. All right, so let's go back to the kidney. So what's the blood supply to the kidney? The arterial blood supply, renal arteries, okay? Right and left renal artery. And the venous drainage is a little bit different in the sense that your right renal vein is much shorter than your left renal vein, because the left renal vein has to cross over the aorta to get to the left side, correct? And that allows for some interesting venous drainage patterns. So, first of all, as a general concept, if you're looking, and we'll use the left kidney here, because this shows one of the things, the arterial blood supply, especially to the kidney, can be very variable. You'll see one of the cadavers over there has 3 renal arteries. And you can see this one, even though we said, and it makes sense when you think about the left, that normally you would expect the renal vein to be anterior or posterior to the renal artery. It's anterior, on top of, but you can see here how it kind of twists around, and sometimes you'll actually see it almost corkscrewing around the vein. But we'll stay on the left here, and it makes sense because it has to cross over the aorta, so it makes sense that it goes on top of the renal vein. So usually from anterior to posterior, the structures in the renal pelvis are renal vein, renal artery, and most posterior what? Ureter. Excellent. Okay. So on the left side, we have things here going into the left renal vein that we don't see here. And we have this one coming from this structure, which is your left adrenal gland, so left adrenal vein. And then we have this one coming up here that's joining it, and that is? Which gonadal? Left gonadal. And if this were a female, that would also be called? Ovarian. And a male? And we talked about the drainage patterns, so the drainage, lymphatic drainage patterns follow this, so you're going to get enlarged nodes, not in the groin if you have testicular cancer, but in the periaortic area, correct? So you would need to do an ultrasound or a CAT. You're not going to likely feel these. So if someone asked you during your rotation, you know, I think this young man has cancer of the testes and we want to evaluate him for lymphatic spread, don't go in and start palpating his groin. Say, well, you know, I doubt if I can feel anything. Why don't we get a CT or an ultrasound to look for periaortic nodes and whatever? And you would have answered their question because they're trying to trick you up and have you go in there and palpate in the groin and you're not going to find anything.